So thanks for coming. My name is Tom Davis. As I said, I'm the ExaGrid systems engineer. Who is ExaGrid? You guys know much about us? No. Nothing? Okay. We are a backup appliance developer. It's all we do. We don't do any software or anything else. We build an appliance that is a target for your backups, period. Right? We support all kinds of different backup applications. As you can see up here, we're the largest vendor in this, independent vendor in this space, and we're actually right now the only one that's really growing. We've had 15 consecutive quarters of excellent growth. We're on that hockey stick. We're starting to ramp up. We're based out of Boston, and we are the only visionary that's left in Gartner's Magic Quadrant. And there's a couple of reasons for that. It has to do with our architecture and the way we do tech support. And we'll talk about all of that stuff. We have well over 10,000 systems deployed worldwide. And the really unique thing about that number, I've been doing backup, recovery, and archive now for almost 20 years. Different companies, different vendors, independent partners. The unique thing about our 10,000 systems installed worldwide, at any given point in time, we have maybe 3 or 4 that are in any sort of elevated support model. Meaning, our boxes go in and they just run, literally. Of all those 10,000, maybe 3 or 4 we're getting calls on a weekly basis, and that's it. You can go out to our website, well over 300 published customer success stories. They're like written tutorials, written references for us. They're excellent articles. Now, as you can see, as I said, we're the only visionary that's left in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. And we also are winning awards year after year after year. These are from last year. Storage Magazine Product of the Year was just announced within the last couple of days that we've won more awards through DCIG, etc. So we're doing really well. We're growing like crazy. Now, when it comes to considering a data deduplication appliance, whether it's a backup appliance or the media server itself, there's really 5 things you need to consider. And first and foremost, it's really how the appliance stores that deduplicated data. Storage efficiency. Because a lot of times, applications or appliances will just scatter the data all over the disk, and that's not very efficient. And that also comes into play when you're trying to replicate, right? If the data is all over, replication takes a long time to accomplish. Now, that being said, these 2 items, most backup applications can handle. But there's really 5. The ones that they can handle is where we shine. And number 3 is fast ingest and short backup window. We provide you with the fastest backup window available from a backup appliance. And the 4th is being able to do fast restores. And then 5th is all wrapped around a fixed length backup window. And I'll explain why we shine on 3, 4, and 5 and the others don't. And I'm not here to bash the competition. We don't really need to. The way the others work is there's a front-end controller that the backup application writes to. When that data comes in, it hits the splitter, and then it goes through that compute hash. And people really forget how process-intensive data deduplication can be. I mean, as soon as that hash kicks in, that server just goes right to its knees, okay? So it hits the splitter, goes through the hash, it goes into the compare. Have I seen this block? Yes. No. Throws it into the appropriate bucket, and then compresses it, and then throws it all over disk. There's your efficiency in how it's stored on the disk. So that really slows down your backup window. Every single file, folder, or virtual machine that comes in is torn down at the block level. So your backup window becomes much longer. Now, conversely, when you need to do a restore, you have to go out to all those blocks that are scattered all over the disk, rehydrate everything, and send it back to the server that requested it. So your restores are even slow. So when we designed our product, we saw that that was a problem. So what we did, instead of this inline processing thing, we came up with what we call the landing zone. When the data comes into us, we write it straight to disk in the landing zone. We don't do any deduplication or compression on the way in. So we are literally writing backups directly to disk at disk speed. That gives us our speed of backups. That gives us our fixed window. So there's no inline processing to slow anything down. So of all the backup appliances out there, we're going to give you the fastest backup window. Now again, that's item number 3 on the list. Now again, talking about a restore, here's the competitive solution. Other disk backup appliances, they got to go out to the disk and find everything to recreate that file from all the scattered blocks. Send it back. That takes a long time to do. there are backup applications that will time out waiting for virtual machines to be rebuilt from all those torn up blocks. I say torn up, it should be deduped blocks. I like torn up better, it sounds better, it's a good technical term. So the way we do things then is we have that landing zone, and in the landing zone all of our data is fully hydrated, it's not deduped, right? So in order to do a restore, we're restoring at disk speed. We can do copy to tapes at disk speed. Now what we do is in parallel we run what we call adaptive deduplication. So we drop the data via the backup into the landing zone, and then once it's there, after a while, what we'll do is grab it, the first version of the file or folder or whatever gets compressed, and we drop it into what we call the repository. So our system is made up of a landing zone for very fast backup, very fast restore, and then the repository for longer term retention where the data is deduped and compressed. Now again, we don't do any of this deduplication or compression as it's coming in. We wait until it's at rest. Make sense so far? That gives us the fast backup and the fast restore capabilities. Now the way we scale is, again, that's completely different than other solutions. The other solution has that front-end controller, right? Again, you guys have been in IT for a while. You know the different solutions that are out there for backup appliances, so I'm not going to bash any names. But they're all the same. They have that front-end controller. That's a limited resource. By limited resource, I mean a certain amount of CPU, memory, networking, and disk. So you start out with a certain size backup. Let's say it's a 20 terabyte backup, right? Your first backup's going to be fine because there's nothing to compare it to. There's no deduplication, maybe a little bit of compression. However, as you grow and run more backups, you're adding more space, you have to add more disk, your backup window gets longer and longer and longer until you finally run into a brick wall where this guy can no longer handle your backup load. Then you tear it out and write another check. Exactly, good point. We call it a forklift upgrade, right? Forklift upgrade, tear out the old one, bring in a new one, bigger, better, faster, stronger, and a lot more dough, right? So we didn't think that was the way of doing things either. So we came out with what we call the scale-out grid architecture. And what we do, instead of forcing you to rip and replace, let's say we start out with the same amount of data, a 20 terabyte backup, we're going to scream. We provide that fixed backup window. We're doing landing zone. We're doing deduplication after the fact. So your backups are going to scream. And I'll show you what our boxes are rated for ingest rate in a couple more slides. So let's say you outgrow this. You bring in another application. You buy another company. Instead of us forcing you to tear this out and start from scratch, you simply snap in another one. It's that easy. And when you snap in that next appliance, it has its own CPU, memory, networking, and storage. We have 8 different size appliances ranging from 3 to 40 terabytes. You can run any size appliance right alongside each other. Doesn't matter to us. It's a base Linux operating system. We can put 25 appliances into what we call the grid. Our largest being 40 terabytes. That's a petabyte. So in one grid, we'll scale up to a petabyte, all managed from a single user interface. And our petabyte grid has a 200 terabyte an hour ingest rate. So we'll literally go through a petabyte in 5 hours. Because every single appliance has its own processing capabilities. So we're screaming with backups. Now, think of us really as a highly intelligent NAS device, because that's really what we are. We're going to create shares on the appliance. You're going to go over and configure your backup job, and you're going to write the data into the shares. Simple as that. We designed this product so it's basically a set it and forget it type of a solution. Put it in place, properly configured, and forget about it. Let it take care of itself. Self-managing on the space, your backup application is doing all the work. Make sense so far? Okay. Here's just another example of that scale out versus scale up. We actually made the comparison here to the data domain solutions. You run into a brick wall. We see it all the time. This is not a slide that our marketing people just came up with. A lot of our deals that we do are, okay, I ran out of space on my data domain. I ran out of space on my HP. They want me to tear out my old one, bring in a new one, and write another check. So we win a lot of deals simply because we do this. And then they have the brick wall, rip and replace. So here's our different size appliances. I'll spend a moment on this slide. We go from a 3,000 all the way up to a 40,000. And for simplicity's sake, let's look at the 3,000. It has a usable capacity of 6 terabytes. Capacity for weekly fulls is 3 terabytes. That is your landing zone. So we're built, the 3,000 is built for a 3 terabyte full backup with 16 weeks retention right out of the chute. The other 3 terabytes is that repository for the long-term storage and retention. Now, looking at the 40,000, that's our 40 terabyte box. It's roughly 78 usable, but 40 terabytes for the landing zone and the remaining roughly 40 is for the repository. The key thing on that slide is look at that ingest rate. 8 terabytes an hour on the 40,000. That's backing up 40 terabytes in a 5-hour window. That's what we're rated at. If you throw 25 of those into a grid, that's a petabyte. We're moving a petabyte in 5 hours, rated speed. Obviously, a lot of that's going to depend upon the load in your environment, your servers that's pushing the data in your network. But this is our rated ingest ratio. At a petabyte, 200 terabytes an hour. Nobody, from a competitive standpoint, is even close to that.
You said 6 in a grid?
Pardon me?
6 in a grid?
25.
25 in a grid.
25 in a grid. The largest being the 40, that's a petabyte. Okay? Now, again, we can mix and match any size in a single grid. We've never end-of-lifed a product. Never. We had a 2 terabyte box and a 4 terabyte box. We just weren't selling them, so we quit selling them. But we've never end-of-lifed a product, and we have customers all over the place with 32,000s alongside a 10,000, or a 40,000 alongside a 21,000. It doesn't matter to us at all. Now you'll also notice on the, well, there should be on the 7,000 as well. We're missing a E here. These E's. These are our encryption devices. And basically what these are SED drives, self-encrypting drives. The nanosecond the data hits the drive, it becomes encrypted. If you were looking into ExaGrid and you needed encryption, we would need to know that, because these are different devices than the 13,000E is a different device than the regular 13,000. They're based on SAS drives. Okay? So those are the different devices. And again, we have customers running 4 or 5 terabyte environments. We're working now with local companies that are in the multiple petabytes. So we scale from practically nothing up to major size environments. We can work with different DR scenarios. You can have a second appliance in your own second data center. Replication is part of the core functionality of our product. We do not charge for it. It's built in. You buy an appliance, you get replication. When we replicate from repository to repository, so we're only replicating dedupe incremental level changes. So we're putting the least amount of data on the pipe as possible. Bandwidth throttling built in, scheduling built in. So that's that number 2 on that very first slide about the replication efficiency, right? So we have all that built in. Our quote is literally a line item for the product, a line item for support, and that's it. It's the easiest product to work with from a technical perspective and from a sales perspective. If you need a 10 gig card, there's another line item. That's it. Max 3 line items on your quote. We can also replicate into an appliance in a third party. You can go to a cloud provider. And the end of this year, we're putting appliances in AWS. So you can, if you have already have an existing AWS cloud, we can replicate up to AWS on your behalf. You have your account, you have your storage, we'll put our appliance in, set everything up, and then obviously then replicate up into AWS. The unique thing about our deduplication, as I said, when we replicate from repository, where it's nothing but dedupe data, to repository. So out in your second site, if you have your own second DR site, and in that second site you're not doing any local backups whatsoever, it's just a target for your replicated backups, that means you don't need a landing zone in that second site. So we can configure that target appliance as 100% repository. So we can sell you a half-size appliance. Like if you had a 40,000 EX40,000 in your primary site, you could put a 21,000 in your DR site, configure it all repository, and end up with over 40 terabytes of repository, same as your primary. So we can go basically half size in your DR site. There's cost savings right there, and a lot of it. Now, we're backup application agnostic. We support well over 30 different backup applications. And again, now, remember, we're just a highly intelligent NAS device. That's it, okay? So any one of these applications or multiple applications simultaneously can be writing to a single grid, to a single appliance within the grid. We're just going to create a share. If you wanted, you could use your native SQL or your native Oracle or these other native database tools to dump directly into a share. All the while, you have a regular backup application doing backups as well. We find it very common. We have tons of customers who are doing backup application backups alongside SQL and Oracle dumps. It's very common. We'll create a SQL share. We'll create a Veeam share. We'll create a Veritas share. We'll create a Commvault share. Very common practice. We are strategic partners with Veeam. Anybody using Veeam in here for your virtual environment? All right, cool. You'll like this. We are partners with them so much so that we have code embedded into our appliance. It's called the Accelerated Data Mover. And what that allows you to do is typically when you're backing up from a backup application to an appliance or to disk, it's done over CIFS or NFS. It's a good transportation protocol, but it's not streamed for backup data. So what we did with Veeam is we have their code embedded in our appliance. So we're speaking Veeam to Veeam. So the way it works is you have the master server, the Veeam backup server. He does an inquiry. He knows the virtual infrastructure, whether it's Hyper-V or VMware. You have the proxy server. Master server says, grab the blocks. Sends them to us via the data mover over that TCP connection, which is highly optimized for streaming backup data. This, in and of itself, is a 3 to 5x performance improvements running your backups from a speed perspective. We're going Veeam to Veeam right here. Proxy to the data mover on our appliance. Go ahead.
The times you quoted earlier, is that including that
Yeah.
increase, or is that
Yep.
in addition to?
This is including. Now, with Veeam, because of the integration we have, we will allow you to keep Veeam deduplication on. We can get this screwed up. We can re-dedupe Veeam's already deduped data. All other backup vendors, deduplication is going to be turned off. We'll leave Veeam's on. So we'll provide another 4 to 6 to 8 times over what you're already getting with Veeam. That's huge. I don't know how they do it. The engineers are, we're dedupe and dedupe. I have no idea how they do it. Yeah. We'll get the whole thing. Deduped. Good point. Now, for you Veeam users, if you're used to doing your synthetic fulls, you know their recommended strategy is a full followed by incrementals forever followed by a synthetic full. Take this ExaGrid dedupe appliance out of the picture for now, just momentarily. So what they do when you have to, typically when another vendor, dumb disk or another backup appliance, when it comes time to do the synthetic full, the master server tells the proxy, okay, I need to do a synthetic full. So he goes out to that disk or whatever it may be. They have to completely rebuild everything from scratch because remember now it's deduped. They have to send it over to the pipe to the proxy. Proxy does its thing and squishes it into the synthetic full and sends it back. That's a load on the storage, on that appliance, on the network, on the proxy. We, on the other hand, when the master server tells the proxy to do an incremental, to do a synthetic, we have all these incrementals already sitting on the appliance, and we have their code embedded in our appliance. We just go boom, right on the appliance. 8x performance improvement on the synthetic full using ExaGrid. That's the relationship we have with Veeam. And we are doing a lot of four-legged sales deals with them at the time. Now, we also support Oracle channels. That's basically a function of RMAN. It really has nothing to do with us. But for extremely large Oracle databases, if you're doing single streaming of an Oracle database, which a lot of customers do, they're not used to being able to break it up into streams, individual streams. Oracle RMAN, we support their channels, which allows you to break a database up into sections and write it to different appliances within the grid. And it just so happens if one of those goes down, our man will detect it and fail over to another, that stream to another appliance. So that's the integration we have with Oracle as well. Little technical, nothing much. We are a RAID 6. Our appliance is all RAID 6 with a hot spare. So think of us as one large RAID 6 pool. Remember I talked about the landing zone and the repository, basically 50-50? That is not a hard partition line. That's a line that will float if need be. And we can set it up for, if you have smaller backups but more retention, we can set it up that way. So we have a smaller landing zone and a larger repository. So it's a RAID 6, one big pool, hot spare, 2 simultaneous drive failures before you have a problem. Now, we are monitoring your system remotely. Okay, we got like a phone home built in. And we typically know if you're having a problem with your system before you guys even do. I've gone out on site. Customer said, hey, I came in this morning and I had an email from my support engineer saying drive XYZ is going out. Here's the FedEx tracking number for the new one I just shipped you this morning. You'll have it tomorrow. New one comes in, tear out the old one, slap in the new one, they rebuild automatically. We have redundant power supplies. We can team the NICs for redundancy purposes. We don't team NICs for throughput. We don't need to. We have a massive throughput the way it is. I mean, running with Veeam, if your proxy server is large enough, you can set it up to run 20 streams to us all at once. We can handle it, from our smallest appliance to the largest. Then those SED drives I told you about, they're 142, 256-bit AES. And again, it's the nanosecond the data hits the disk, it's encrypted. It does not interfere whatsoever with your backup window. And whether or not you use our encryption devices or not, we can do encryption across the pipe for replication purposes. Now, here's the other thing that our friend Gartners really like about us. You guys will like this too. Our support model is completely different from anything what you're used to. The way it works is you buy an appliance from us. We'll ship you the box. You get it bolted into your rack onto the network so that it can communicate with your backup application. Then you're going to hop on a WebEx with your ExaGrid support engineer. First thing you're going to do is pop up the UI, web-based UI, add the appliance into the user interface, click on the appliance and go in and add the shares. If the share needs replication, you'll set up the replication target. Done with ExaGrid. Then you're going to go over to your backup application. And with your ExaGrid engineer, you're going to set up Veeam, you're going to set up Commvault, you're going to set up VeritasNet Backup or Backup Exec, because your ExaGrid support engineer is a subject matter level expert in your backup application. They're nearly level 2 certified. They know just as much about your backup application as your vendor support team does. Now, so you're going to set up the ExaGrid, you're going to set up the shares, you're going to set up the backup jobs. You think you're done? Well, your ExaGrid support engineer that worked with you, he or she is assigned to you for as long as you own your appliance. The thing about that is now if you ever have a problem, you don't need to pick up an 800 number and call into some level 1 support and relay your problem and wait for hours, if not a couple of days or whatnot, waiting for a response. You pick up the phone and call your ExaGrid support engineer direct. He or she is there. If not, somebody else will be immediately. Or if it's one where you can wait for them to call you back. It won't be long. So you have your ExaGrid engineer for the remainder of how long you own your ExaGrid. And the thing of it is, as I pointed out earlier, we run. We just put in and we run. The vast majority of our support calls are, how do I do this with Veeam? How do I do this with Backup Exec? How do I do this with Net Backup? True statement. It's so easy to install. Put it in place, configure it, and let it be. My best analogy there is I have a customer in Chicago, you talk to him, it's a very large museum. How's it going? He says, I treat you guys just like a cat. And the first time I heard it, I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? He says, I just open the door, I make sure you got food and water and a clean litter box, and I shut the door. That's all I have to worry about. We have references all around the Twin Cities area that can speak basically the same thing. We provide all releases. You get a new release, call your support engineer and say, let's put it in at this given point in time, boom, done. They'll help you walk through it. It's as simple as that. And then, as I said, we do the health monitoring. Now, to wrap up, we provide the unique architecture with the landing zone and our scale-out grid. 25 appliances in the grid, all the way up to a petabyte. We are actually dropping our prices. Customers, I'm sorry, not customers, other vendors are raising their prices. We just dropped ours. We're not going to lose a deal on cost. If we're apples to apples comparison, we're not going to lose on cost. And then our support, which we just talked about. And that's it. I actually, well, we finished up right on time, but small crowd. Any questions or anything?
So say Beam, and you've got 6 nodes in your ExaGrid. Is it one share, one namespace, and you say go, and it figures out where to throw it? Or?
That's an excellent question. You're a Veeam user right now. Are you familiar with 9? They have something called Sober, S-O-B-R. Sober literally puts a virtual interface in front of our appliance so that when they send a backup job, it goes into that Sober, and I cannot remember what Sober stands for. Stacy, okay. They put, I'm sorry, this is Stacy Martin. He's our local sales rep.
Is that the scale out storage thing?
Scale out something repository. Scale out backup repository. Scale out backup repository. So they write to Sober, and Sober says, okay, send these streams to these different appliances within the grid. Prior to Sober, we would create a share on each one of the nodes, or multiple shares on each one of the nodes. Excellent question. Anything else?
And the dedupe goes across all of them?
Yep. We do global deduplication on the next release when we support Sober, and that's like within the next few weeks. We never release anything until we kill it internally. And when I say kill it, I mean it is burnt solid. Because, as I mentioned, you know, we put in place and we just run. We very seldom break. Our corporate is adamant that we're not going to do any upgrade just for the simple sake of adding something new. When a customer or a vendor comes out and says, okay, I have this to add into your appliance, we're going to bang the nuts out of it for 6 months before we release it. We're just not going to put anything out there just for the sake of putting it out. So when Sober is rock solid from a Veeam perspective, we're ready for it.
Since you do all the different apps that you have put on there, from that standpoint, how often do you have updates?
As far as our appliance, like software updates, their minors are probably every couple of months. Majors are maybe once a year, right around in that time frame.
Have you ever had one that you pushed out that
Went bad?
had problems? Encountered later?
I have been here roughly a year and a half. There's been 2 majors, and the answer to that is, in my experience, no. And that's because, as I said, our CEO he's not going to let anything out the door until it's rock solid. We're not going to interfere with our customers' backup environment.
As Tom already pointed out, too, we've been shipping product for 12 years, but not discontinuing one appliance for 12 years.
Yep.
But we've been writing code, developing code for 16 years. So, I'm sorry, 14 years.
14 years. Yep.
So our code's pretty big.
The code is baked. I've never seen anything like it, quite frankly, and I'm just not trying to make a sale here, but we are baked solid. We have appliances that are 4 or 5 years old running right alongside brand spanking new ones.
You end up being redundant across nodes, so you've got like a 6 node, and for whatever reason, one node totally dies. Is it?
We are not clustered in any way, shape, or form. Now, that being said, again, roughly a year and a half here, I've never seen a node go down. But if it does happen, something like that happens, what we do is you're immediately on the phone with your support engineer, and they'll walk you through getting everything rebuilt, or you'll have a new appliance shipped in your door within 24 hours.